What is up, Idle Ninjas? It's Aaron here with another video. And before we start with today's video, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button. A lot of you guys aren't subscribed yet. In today's video, we are going to be rocking and stacking all the ultimate Shurikens in the game currently. The first ultimate Shuriken we're going to talk about is Meteor. This is a fire-based ultimate Shuriken. It is the primary damage dealer of the fire build. The targeting is fairly decent now with the multiple meteor drops that it does. It does have some fire pen. The reinforcement for it on ultimate equipment is pretty decent, increasing the damage by 25% and ignoring magic resistance and elemental stats by 50%. This ultimate will fall under the A tier. The next ultimate is another fire ultimate Shuriken. It is going to be Flame Ring. The damage on it is pretty mediocre. It's not the main damage dealer, but it's the secondary damage dealer of the fire build. It does have a little bit of fire pen. The ultimate reinforcement increases the damage by 20%, ignores elemental stacks by 40 to 100 based on the level of Flame Ring. The bulks do some decent damage for it. They did increase the speed of Flame Ring and made the animation a lot better in the last patch. However, Flame Ring doesn't start feeling good till around level 3 or 4. So with this being said, it takes a lot of investment, and we're going to have to classify this as an in-between of tier A and B. Next, we have Crimson Rose, another fire Shuriken. It is a utility Shuriken and does little to no damage for the fire build. However, it does buff the damage of the fire elements, or the fire damage, I should say. Its ultimate ability from reinforcement is kind of trash. It increases the damage, but it still does no damage, so it needs a lot more work for it to be good. It needs to add some magic resist reduction or some fire stat reduction of the enemies. So this is going to have to classify as a C tier. And our last fire Shuriken will be Phoenix. It was recently added to the game. However, this Shuriken does little to no damage as well. It has way too much knockback, knocking the enemies out of the flame ring and making it get out of range sometimes of the meteor. However, its ultimate ability says it increases damage. It still does no damage, and the trail that it leaves on the ground of burning really does no damage. So this one needs a lot of work from the devs. We're going to classify this as an E tier. Our first water element will be Wave. It did get a buff in the previous patch of this week. It went from 25% to 50% increase in the damage. It also gained some ignoring elemental stat by 60 to 50 depending on the level of your wave. It has fairly good damage for the attack build, and it is one of the damage shurikens for the water build. Wave is highly still used by a lot of the attack players, and we're going to have to classify Wave in between A and B. Our next water element will be Bubble. This is a utility ultimate Shuriken. It provides heal as one of our ultimate Shurikens, and the only other healing Shuriken will be Blood Raven, but we'll talk about that later. Bubble doesn't really do any damage, but it does provide a significant shield for us, providing more survivability, and it has really good heals as you can take the cooldown to every throw, as you can reduce the stack to pretty much 0, but you still have the cooldown, but it still makes a pretty good heal Shuriken for survivability. Ultimate reinforced equipment doesn't really matter because we're not going to use it in most of our builds because we only have 4 gear slots and we're going to focus more on damage. So we will classify Bubble as a C tier. Our third water element will be Crescent. This is a damage dealing water Shuriken, and its ultimate reinforced equipment is pretty good. It returns the projectiles towards you, and it also now ignores defense and magic resistance by 60 to 20 depending on the level of your ultimate Shuriken. And the reinforced also allows you to reduce the stack size so that it procs the ultimate reinforcement every throw, meaning that every throw you're going to do is going to return projectiles to you. This is a great damage dealing Shuriken. It also does 20% more increased damage of it when it's reinforced. It's great AoE, it's great for farming the maps, or as you would say, the fields. And we're going to classify Crescent as a B tier. Our final water element Shuriken will be Icicle. This is a new Shuriken that was added. Not many people are actually using this Shuriken, so I haven't got many thoughts about Icicle. But if we had to base this just based off of what we can read and not proper testing, Icicle reminds me of Thunder Pierce type of Shuriken where it deals projectile damage. It could be very good, I think, if you pair it correctly. It does provide very good crowd control as it does freeze the enemies, making them slow or just stop so they don't come near you. And then you can basically deal more damage to them by surviving longer if you're having a problem surviving. It does have defense magic resistance reduction by 24 to 180 depending on the level. Without having much information from other users' inputs, I'm probably gonna have to classify this as a C tier. It does look very good to me, however, and I think I need to test it further. Our next ultimate that we're gonna talk about is gonna be Wind Blast. This is a wind element Shuriken. I haven't seen anybody actually use this Shuriken. It did get a little buff, I guess you can say, in the previous patch for its reinforced gear, but it's still not being used and it doesn't even look good on paper or even through what I can read on the game. I would probably have to classify this as an E tier. Our next wind element Shuriken will be Whirlwind. This received a nerf in the patch this week. The projectile speed was actually reduced from 2.5 to 2. It did gain, reducing an element by 60 to 120 depending on the level of the ultimate Shuriken, and it did gain a damage increase. However, I see less people using Whirlwind now. It used to be meta, and now it's no longer, I guess, viable. It still is affected by multi-shots when you have it with reinforced equipment. I think Whirlwind still is a pretty viable ultimate Shuriken, however, it's just becoming less popular through the player base of attack. It is a damage dealing for the wind element. It has good AoE, and before it had good boss damage. I'm not too sure how the boss damage is now, as many people have switched the meta or for attacks or trying out different things now. I'm going to classify Whirlwind as a C tier. Our third wind element is Beast Claw, and this one received a significant nerf in the patch this week. Its debuff for defense reduction was actually removed. The stacks were increased by 15 to 25. And its damage per stack was also increased. Ignores element and defense magic resistance per stack up to a max of 150. However, no one's really using Beast Claw before this and even after this. So I'm gonna have to classify Beast Claw as a tier D. Our final wind element is Ballista. This was just newly introduced into the game. It reminds me of a Thunder Pierce, just like Icicle did for the water element. This will be the wind element's type of Thunder Pierce. It is affected by multi-shot, meaning that it'll send out more projectiles. It has a basic penetration, and every level that it goes up, it gains more penetration and ignores enemies' defense and magic resistance by 100, increasing by levels. It seems like it could be fairly good. I don't see anybody using Ballista though, so without any much information, we're going to classify this as a C tier because it looks pretty good on paper. Now onto the earth elements. Our first one we're going to look at is Poison Ivy. This was a new earth element ultimate Shuriken that was introduced to the game. It seems to be pretty good when you read it on paper. It does apply some crowd control by rooting the enemies, and it deals poison damage every second. The poison ignores element stats by 300 and reduces the HP regen, and increases by the level of the actual Shuriken. I've seen some attack users try it and then they eventually dropped it off. I'm not too sure if it's because the lack of damage or was it just the lack of the ultimate level of the Shuriken and it just wasn't keeping up with their higher level ultimate Shurikens that they had. We'll have to wait and see how this plays out eventually in probably the weeks, maybe months to come as people try out new metas and more balance is done in the game. So Poison Ivy is going to receive the C tier. Our second earth element will be Maple. You gotta buff this patch. I see more people using Maple now. Maybe earth is becoming more meta as people are figuring out things and trying out new different things of element stacking for attack players. They actually removed multi-shot from the ultimate reinforced equipment but they did increase the damage of Maple. The reinforced equipment, Maple's second diffusion flies towards the target in unison. Maple provides very good AoE spread as far as farming the fields. I'm pretty sure it does pretty good boss damage too, as it has a lot of projectiles. And with the reinforced of flying in unison towards the boss, it should do significant damage to the boss. We're going to give Maple the A tier. Our third Earth element will be Quake. It received a rework in this patch. They got rid of the increased damage that it used to provide, increasing the damage, but it did gain element defense and magic resistance ignore or change basically, and it increases as it goes up in level. Quake skill actually deals extra damage to 12% of the target's max HP. It ignores enemies' defense earth element stat by 80, increasing by level. Quake does provide some crowd control by slowing the enemies, so making it slower so they don't actually get towards you. I see a lot of attack players actually using Quake, and before the patch and even after the patch. Quake still provides very good damage and very good utility. We're going to classify Quake as an in-between tier A and B. And our final Earth element will be Swamp. This one received a kind of weird rework in the patch. It no longer stacks with Goblin's defense reduction, which is kind of weird, as this is the only one that says it doesn't work with Goblin. It did receive a damage increase. Swamp does reduce the defensive damage, so it provides very good utility as well as slowing them. It does provide some significant damage too. And with the reinforced gear, it actually provides very good damage because it does damage every second. A lot of the attack users are still using Swamp after the patch and pre-patch, so it has remained in the meta of the Earth build. We're going to classify Swamp in the D tier. Now onto our neutral elements. The first one we're going to talk about is Blood Raven. Blood Raven seemed to receive a nerf in the patch. Its heal amount was reduced. Before it didn't have a limit, now it's fixed to 50% of your max HP. It is still a good heal for ultimate Shuriken, as it provides kind of decent damage, not really your major damage dealing Shuriken as your other Shurikens that you have of choice. But if you need a heal type Shuriken, Blood Raven is a good one to go to. Its heal amount is probably on par with Heal, the legendary Shuriken, but it probably provides more damage than heal. So with this nerf to Blood Raven, we're probably going to classify it as a D tier. Gear is our last neutral Shuriken. It is a very interesting Shuriken. I don't see anybody really using this one, but its reinforced ability on ultimate equipment is kind of interesting, as it pulls enemies towards you, and it's strengthened, which I'm not too sure what it means by strengthened, but I'm guessing it pulls more enemies towards you. The skill ignores enemies' defense. However, if you're a magic attack player, the skill doesn't ignore magic resistance, so this is kind of weird. I don't think any magic attack player will actually use this one, but I think if it got reworked a little bit more, it could provide actually a pretty good utility in some of the magic attack builds. We need more information on gear. I'm not too sure how the damage is, but on paper it doesn't look very good, and the skill doesn't look very good. So we're going to classify this as an E tier. And finally, the electric element ultimate Shurikens. The first one we're going to look at is Electric Storm. It provides pretty good damage. It reduces magic resistance by a lot depending on the level of your Shuriken. The stun is kind of annoying because most of our damage, we need the enemies on top of us, if not near us, so that stun is kind of annoying. But overall, it's a pretty good ultimate Shuriken, and I'm going to classify this in between B and C. Our second ultimate electric Shuriken will be Thunder Pierce. And many of you guys that are watching my channel know that I really like Thunder Pierce, and I talk about Thunder Pierce all the time. Thunder Pierce kind of got a buff this patch. We gained Pierce basically. And Pierce, what it is, it ignores enemies' magic resistance by a little bit as you get more levels in it. Thunder Pierce is affected by multi-shot, and it's actually pretty good AoE and damage dealing. And when you're on top of enemies, it does really good damage, and it does good boss damage, as long as you can stay on top of the boss. The reinforcement of this actual Shuriken is pretty good. Increases Thunder Pierce's damage by 25%, and then it sends the spears in random directions, dealing about 50% of its damage. So if I had to classify Thunder Pierce, it would be in between A and B, just because of how you have to have the enemies on top of you. Our third electric element, Ultimate Shuriken, will be Thunderstroke. This received a kind of I would say a buff. This patch, Reinforced Shuriken equipment reduces the stack size from 3 to 2, as long as you had 2 points into stack reduction. It now does a wave on hit, which adds more AoE to it, making it more of a damage dealing Shuriken in the field. And it deals 40% of Thunderstroke's damage. It is also affected by multi-shot now, which is really good. Thunderstroke's skills element does ignore magic resistance, so it's pretty good depending on the level of your Thunderstroke. However, Thunderstroke still misses bosses a lot. This is why I'm not giving Thunderstroke the S tier. Thunderstroke will receive the A tier. Our last Thunder element and the last Ultimate Shuriken that we're going to talk about today is Thunder Spirit. Thunder Spirit is a utility Ultimate Shuriken for the electric element. Its reinforced ability on ultimate equipment is really nice, as it provides you 100% uptime on its actual ultimate effect. Because it reduces the stack size to 2, basically you're able to have it up 100% of the time. Its damage actually is pretty crap, but it does provide you a significant electric buff, increasing your damage. We are going to give Thunder Spirit the B tier just because of how much of utility and buffs that it gives you. So that's pretty much it for the tier list. Let me know down in the comments if you agree on the rankings that I gave everything. Let me know if you think something deserves a higher ranking or something deserves a lower ranking. I would love to see what you guys say. Most of these rankings are based off of my personal experience and what I've heard from other players when I talked to them about this prior to making this tier list. Like I said in the beginning, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and like button if you like my content. Till the next video. See ya!